Hello, and welcome to another episode of Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. I'm your host, Amanda, and my awesome co-host is...
Hello, I'm Megan.
So we are your source for messy, imperfect homeschool advice and community. Now, don't get us wrong. If it isn't too ballsy of us to say, we know our stuff when it comes to homeschool, so the advice is solid, but we will never show up here and pretend to be perfect or spew advice that is so unrealistic and unattainable that even we can't implement it.
Yeah. In other words, we are very different than most of the homeschool influencers that you're seeing on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, who are pushing their messes out of the way to film content so that you think they just have their shit together all the time. And spoiler alert, most of them probably don't.
Yeah, we've talked about it before. If this is not your first episode with us, I really don't understand why some people feel so compelled to pretend their life is something other than what it really is, like especially for internet strangers.
Yeah,
Who cares?
exactly. It makes absolutely no sense. I mean, we show up, sometimes the hair gets blown out, sometimes there's pajamas, sometimes whatever, sometimes, yeah.
We have a special guest today, so I washed my hair. If you don't watch the video version of the podcast, you probably don't know how rare that is, but I did in fact wash my hair for today's episode. So there you go.
I did mine about 10 minutes before we started, which is why it's still wet. So I had great plans for the day. I went on a tour this morning, a historical tour, and I had to be there way too early for my night owl self. So I was like, well, I'll get up in the morning and I'll wash and dry my hair so that it's done for the tour and I look civilized because it's with a group, like a steady group that I belong to. So it's people I see. And then it'll just be done for the episode. Well, I snoozed and I snoozed and I snoozed. So that didn't happen. Then it was super windy on the tour. So I was actually glad that I didn't. But yeah, we're getting there. It's a phased approach. So yeah. But as Amanda said, we have a guest today. We have Lindsay joining us. So welcome, Lindsay.
Thank you guys for having me today. I'm glad you said that about being a mess because here I am in my car.
Yeah, this is what we do. If you are watching the video, Lindsay's just joining from her car because her car Wi-Fi was stronger than her house Wi-Fi during a storm. So, we do what we do. And this is homeschool life. You make what you have available to you work and we rock it. So yeah. So we will introduce Lindsay more fully in just a minute. Here's the deal. We typically start off all of our episodes with a values statement because I tried to join enough co-ops living in the Bible Belt, and I feel like if the Southern Baptists can require you to sign a statement of faith to join their co-op, we can start our episodes with a statement of our values, which are very different than the ones I was being asked to sign, FYI. Then, typically we move into a weekly update, but we have so many things to discuss with Lindsay, and she has years of incredible lived experience to share with us, so we are going to blow through our usual intro stuff really, really quick. Sound good, Amanda?
Yep, sounds good. So Lindsay will be joining us today to talk about homeschooling dyslexic kiddos, and we are definitely excited to dive into that momentarily. And honestly, stick around even if you're not personally homeschooling a kiddo who is dyslexic, because if you're volunteering to teach a co-op or organizing homeschool activities, or even just trying to be a good friend to other like-minded homeschoolers, it's so important to have a better understanding so that all kids and families feel seen and supported. Okay. But in order to make the most of our time with Lindsay, we are going to boil down our usual intro message into a tiny nutshell for you. Number one, you don't have to be a mom to hang with Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. Okay, we are moms and we are definitely unfiltered, but that is not an audience prereq, okay? However you present to the world, you are welcome here. Whatever your family makeup, your family is valued and embraced here in our space. So welcome. And then number two, we are an inclusive secular space. We support Black Lives Matter, abortion as healthcare, LGBTQIA+ rights, and vaccines. And honestly, the list goes on and on. We do not support kidnapping innocent people and holding them in detention centers, pretending like they're not dying on our watch. We are not about that nonsense. We do not agree to disagree on human rights. Nutshell.
Yeah, that's our line in the sand. Easy. So now we will be equally as speedy with our weekly recap. Our recap is part of our process to separate ourselves from those influencers who do only share the perfect sides of their lives. And, we're all aware that social media can be super toxic and that influencer culture can be super toxic, but it's still super hard not to walk away feeling less than when you're drinking other people's fake perfect personas out of a fire hose because it's being pushed into your algorithm 24 hours a day. So we try to counteract that here with a little bit of realness. We love homeschooling. It's not a bitch fest. It's just a more accurate representation of what life looks like. But we're going to do our weekly recaps this week in 60 seconds or less. We're going to do a little bit of a lightning round. In fact, I'm going to time us. You ready? And that way we have more time with Lindsay. So stand by. Anybody who listens on the regular knows that I make chicken and rice every single day for my ADHD RFID kiddo. So my phone timer is automatically set to the amount of time it takes to cook rice. Let me just reset that to 1 minute. And then, all right, Amanda, weekly recap, go.
So if you listen on the regular, laundry is often a situation in my world. And yeah, I haven't done laundry for my entire family since getting back from visiting my parents in Missouri. So it is absolutely becoming a situation that needs to be handled. I have no plans to handle it, but it needs to be handled. We just committed to braces, well, technically Invisalign for the kiddo. Yeah, so our HSA account is feeling extra abused right now. And Christmas in July, which is really just a cheesy holiday movie marathon and tasty treats, it could not have come at a better time for us. Both kiddo and I really needed to slow down just in general. Less time out in the heat, fewer play dates, more chill time at home, and hopefully those freaking sugar cookies that I keep talking about. There you go, I'm done. I'm dreaming of sugar cookies, but that's it.
Exactly. Yes. The sugar cookies will get made. Okay. Excellent. All right. 60 seconds. Here I go.
Yeah, your turn.
I made my kids' final summer camp payments the other day, which feels like, whew, like what a load off because, oh my gosh, the weight of making payments is like, bleh. So I was super glad that that was done and super thankful that they are privileged enough to be able to go to camp. So I'm excited for them. Status quo really for the kids, like they're taking classes they were taking, they're doing projects they were doing, that kind of stuff. So that's all good. I mentioned a couple of episodes ago that I joined the gym and that if I didn't show up to podcast again, it's because I died in body pump class. And I haven't died yet, obviously, because I am here. So that's good news. And I've actually been enjoying myself. So I was like, oh my goodness. Okay. Like Amanda said, I too am working on slowing down after our book release, which has been epic. I am going to take July and focus on sewing. And beyond that, parenting, just like some teen life stuff. I love parenting teens. I think teens are amazing. And in culture, they get a bad rap overall. But every once in a while, there are some moments. And today we had some. So I was like, okay, there's my timer. Done. Okay.
All right.
Phew.
We did it.
Okay. So let's do this thing. Dyslexia and homeschooling. We talk about neurodivergence all the time. But a lot of times we're talking in terms of ADHD, autism, gifted, sensory processing disorder, dysgraphia, a few others that come up quite often. Neither myself nor Amanda have a dyslexic kiddo. So, I mean, yeah, we could do what other homeschool people do who don't have lived experience or other in-depth knowledge of dyslexia. And they just yell Orton Gillingham every time dyslexia comes up because that's kind of the Pavlovian response to dyslexia. And I mean, Amanda does have a lot of knowledge and expertise about phonics and reading instruction. You need to teach your kid how to read, you go talk to Amanda, book a coaching session. But it's the same as any other type of parenting or homeschool flavor. There's what you know, and then there's what you've done. And those things can be very, very different. And Lindsay has done the thing. So we're super happy that she's here today.
Well, yeah, and that's it. Sometimes surface level is fine. Sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes that's all you want. But we usually go deep around here. So today, our plan is basically just to fire away at Lindsay with questions and see where the conversation takes us. I'm sure we'll be learning right along with you, the listeners. So we'd love to officially welcome Lindsay here with us today. And we'd love to have you introduce yourself and just share a bit about your family and maybe kind of lead us into your dyslexia story.
Thank you guys so much for having me today. I'm excited. So, my name is Lindsay. I live in South Florida. I have two kids who I homeschool, a 15-year-old who is neurotypical, and I have a 10-year-old who is neurodivergent. The fight for understanding dyslexia, because for a long time at first, I didn't understand what was going on, just that something was going on, was extremely complicated. And I think so much of the early years, or my first years homeschooling, were centered around identifying this thing, identifying this challenge. It was almost like survival mode. I look back on those years and I'm like, wow, we were really in survival mode trying to figure out this thing. Things are a lot smoother now. Of course, they're not perfect, but we love homeschooling. And my child who's dyslexic, she's 10. She's about to start fifth grade. She's starting some fifth grade classes, and it's night and day with the right accommodations. So I'm excited to be here and talk about the journey.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. That's a great intro. I have kind of like first question for you. What are some of the things you mentioned? It was really hard just figuring out what the thing was, like knowing there was a thing. And we've talked about that in other episodes. A lot of times, there's a thing, whether your kid's in brick and mortar school or homeschooling, and trying to figure out that thing and get other people to help you figure that out can be one of the biggest hurdles. What were some of the little things you noticed or signs that you noticed before you had a name for it?
So when she was preschool age, and at the time my son was in brick and mortar school, my eldest, it was like March 2020, everything shut down. She had one day of preschool before everything shut down. And while I did homeschool preschool with my son, when he was younger, before he went to brick and mortar school, I wanted to do the same with her. But I noticed from the time she was really, really little, things were a challenge or she refused. And it wasn't really her personality. She is very like all into everything she does. She will try anything once. But when it came to anything related to school, to match cat with the letters, we weren't doing it. And not only were we not doing it, we were throwing the whole table with us. And there were things like that. She loved to sing, but she would repeat the same lines over and over and over and over. And we would play the other lines, and there was no really recollection of them. It was like she was struggling with her words. Or she would say the wrong word in the middle of a sentence, even if it was a very familiar thing. Like if she wanted to say the juice over there, she would be like, the thing, the pool, something that was totally unrelated. And it was like this panic. And I noticed at first when right before the pandemic shut down, I said there's something with her speech. She's using the wrong words. She's using the wrong letters, and not ones that you would like D, B, P, nothing like that you would understand would get mixed up. But a big one was like M and P. She would mix up the sounds altogether. Pool would be like the mool and things like that. And I would say there's something here. And we went through the early start. They did the speech eval. They said she had a speech delay. And the preschool that she had done one day of before the shutdown was a speech program. And she had an amazing speech pathologist, but I wasn't convinced it was all just speech related.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yep, trust your gut.
That's it. It's so hard. And exactly what you're describing can be a little bit of a symptom in a lot of different diagnoses. So figuring out exactly which one and the whole big picture, it's so crucial. I wonder, kind of given what you have described, let's take a step forward in the process for you personally. I think getting this out there for other people who are listening and at the beginnings of their stage, or the people who are listening and like allies. I'm not really sure you're allies in this context, but everyone listening knows what I mean. And if you don't know, then you probably left quite a while ago because we're not your people. So what kind of misconceptions did you have about dyslexia before you were living it as a family?
A ton. The biggest thing that you hear about dyslexia, or the biggest thing I heard about dyslexia, was it was letter reversals. When you're reading, when you're writing, you're just swapping letters. I had no idea dyslexia was a spectrum. I had no idea that there were some kids that maybe did just swap letters. And then there are some kids that flat out would not read, could not understand the beginning, middle, and end of a word. Like most things are a spectrum, dyslexia is a spectrum. And I think The most jarring thing for me is when she was diagnosed, dyslexia wasn't on my radar. I knew so little about it. I'm like, no, she's not just mixing her letters. I was floored when the neuropsychologist was telling me about dyslexia. And I think most jarring to me was 1 in 5 have dyslexia. So if 1 in 5, which is a huge chunk of this population, have dyslexia, why is it so hard? Why is it so hard in the classroom to get diagnosed, to find resources, to have any information on dyslexia? So that was definitely huge for me. And I think something we see in all communities, homeschool or otherwise, is they're young, they'll read at their own time. And I tried Florida virtual school because I thought I needed help with why she wasn't reading before we had the diagnosis. And I see that attitude a lot in the homeschool groups. And I feel like everyone wants to shoot the messenger, but I'm like, I know we're only 5 or 6, but if your gut's telling you there's an issue here, I think there's this big misconception. You have to be 10 or 12, but by then, early intervention is so important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on that one. Preach, sister. Well, I don't know who we're preaching to because I don't church, but that's a whole other thing. I think you make an excellent point. If 20% of the population is somewhere on the spectrum, if there was anything else happening in the world that impacted 20%, as long as it wasn't only women, they would be all over that.
Mhm.
It's one of those things that drives me just absolutely nutty. Okay, so I'll bet there are parents or caregivers who are listening and contemplating homeschooling and thinking, who am I to even think I can homeschool my dyslexic kiddo? The school has specialists who have studied how to teach dyslexic kids, and they have resources that I don't even know about. I don't even know where to start. Can this even be done? And now look, I personally have a couple friends who had to leave public school, the system completely, because it just couldn't provide the support and encouragement their dyslexic kiddo needed to thrive educationally. And when kids aren't thriving educationally, they tend to not thrive socially, emotionally as well. Like, we know this. There are lots of studies. We talked about it before. Go listen to other episodes. So we know that it is possible to leave the traditional brick and mortar school system or the public school system and help your kids. I'm curious if there has been a point in your journey specifically where you thought, she might be better off in public school with the experts. I know you mentioned trying virtual school, but at any point did you ever think like, we're just like, homeschool is probably not the right thing. She needs someone more than me.
I did before her diagnosis, which is why I went to Florida Virtual, which is a public school, because I thought she needed more help than me. Something that I will die on the hill of is that my daughter, who is Black and a female, they were happy to see her fail. I don't think the Florida school system was as proactive to figure out what was going on as if it were my son, who is a white male. So I think that was a huge factor because I'm not a quiet person. So I was calling every admin in that school constantly. Something's wrong. And they failed her. She was retained in kindergarten. And they're like, some kids are not going to do that well in school. And I knew that she's right. And I knew they were wrong. And that's when I sought the private evaluation again. And that's the frustrating part, is that I have the privilege to do so. That for so many people who are reliant on public school, and I will always believe in public education as a human right, access to it as a human right, quality public education as a human right. For the people who rely on that, nothing was done.
Mhm.
And they put her in reading intervention groups, but it was standard instruction. She was with children of all different support need levels. She wasn't getting anything that she needed, and it was just making her more depressed. So for me, that small blip in public school, albeit virtual, was watching her go from a bright, bold, happy child to a depressed, scared kindergartner. She lost that whole year of her life, and we spent years rebuilding that confidence. I can't speak for states that are not Florida, but no schools in our state, and I know a lot of other states, people I've talked with, they don't offer any of the supports. Barton, Wilson, Orton, Gillingham, any of them, they don't have reading interventionists trained in dyslexia, which is frustrating when 1 in 5 are dyslexic to some extent, to not have that.
Mhm.
So for us in Florida, if you want literacy instruction, people who are trained in dyslexia, every single person was private pay. So again, I've heard it called the disability of the privileged, which is frustrating to me when something impacts 1 in 5. And when you look at the numbers by male and female, when you look at it by like race, and you see who's disproportionately affected by dyslexia, that's what made me, I know you use the word ally, I want to be an ally, I want to be an advocate, because the awareness has to get out there if this impacts so many.
Well, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I can't speak specifically to who's available in the schools in California, but I can say that living in California and going through the public school system here in California, some, and having a lot of friends who are in it, we too, even in California, see that the systemic racism inherent in neurodivergent diagnoses within the public school system is still really prevalent. And all of our friends and the circle of people we know, the ones who got really good help in the school and from the school were white. And the ones that got put off and pushed away and ended up having to go private pay to make sure that they got the help they needed were not white. And it's really fucked up, for lack of a better way to put it. It's really messed up. And so, I think anyone who's listening, if you're in this, you're like, yes, I know. Maybe it helps to hear us just say it out loud. And if you're not in it, this is one of those things maybe you haven't thought about or you're not aware of how hard it is when you're not white and you're in the system, or your kiddo isn't white and you have the privilege of being the white parent advocating. It's a whole different world, and it's unfortunate. That's like the understatement of the year. It's unfortunate.
I think that's fucked up was better. That was a better descriptor. Yeah.
I'm like, how many different ways can I say it's fucked up without just saying that? Like,
just call it what it is. Yeah.
Just leave it there.
I mean, I didn't get super involved in the homeschool communities when we lived in South Carolina, because by then I had just given up on finding any sort of secular or progressive community at that point. But I was in some groups just for keeping a pulse on things. And so I don't know the exact language, but I had seen multiple posts about the fact that dyslexia isn't even one of the recognized things that they serve in public school there. It's like, that's not one of the things we can help with. And I'm like, how is that even possible? It's unreal.
It's true. And I know it's the same in Florida too. It's reading disability or, learning disability. And for something that impacts so many. So everyone thinks I'm an alarmist in the homeschool groups when someone's like, help, my 6-year-old can't recognize beginning, middle, and end, or my 7-year-old can't recognize these letters. I'm like, I know they're young, but it's worth looking into.
Well, we did an episode, if people are listening and you haven't listened to it, we did an episode on the whole concept of, can you be behind as a homeschooler? Because you see posts all the time of people who are new to homeschooling and they come in, I'm starting to homeschool, my kid is behind. And at least half the comments say, they can't be behind in homeschooling. It's just where your child is at. And we're like, okay, we agree with meeting children where they're at. And we agree with measuring progress by forward movement, not necessarily by state standards, if that's not where your kiddo's at and all that. Okay, all of that is true. But there's also a certain point where you need to raise a red flag and be like, something's up here. And your kiddo could be 12 and you're still going, there's no behind in homeschool, and they're still not reading. You needed way, way, way long time ago to get some outside perspective going on there. So if you're in that camp, or you're one who's, can you be behind? Is my child behind? Go listen to the behind episode, because we've really flushed that out over there. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I see that all the time. People are always yelling at me online when I suggest dyslexia and there's no behind. I'm like, well, my husband's diabetic. If you're diabetic, you need insulin. Like, you can't withhold tools from your child that needs them. And no, it's all great here.
He's not behind.
Yeah.
It'll sort itself out. It'll figure out how to regulate insulin. Just give it time.
Yeah.
His pancreas is on its own journey. It's fine. Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess we have lots of questions, right? But your kiddo is, you said 10? Yeah. So how has dyslexia shown up differently at different ages for your kiddo? And you might not know this yet because you're not quite there. You're in the early stages. My kid is always happy to tell people that puberty starts at 8. But is it like other neurodivergent diagnoses where like all hell breaks loose during puberty?
You know, yes and no. I think the worst part of it when they're little is so overwhelming because they're not like their peers. And it's hard for me to judge because now at the puberty phase, she's proud of herself. She's thriving a little more than she was. She just did her first ever out-school class that involved group reading, script reading in a class, and she loved it, which I never ever thought would happen. Confidence is a struggle. So, it ebbs and flows at the puberty age. They struggle with confidence regardless. But right now, I feel like she's at her I'm on top of the world phase. But we spent years getting her there because it's really hard when you have a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, and they say things like, I'm too stupid to live. I'm not leaving my room and I'm not going to that party. We did class at the beach and the marine biologist passed out a word search and she was like, I gotta go. Just where you can't really enjoy yourself. You're always like fight or flight, fight or flight. So, we do have our moments of that at this phase, but I think just having the right tools is very helpful for her. And I think there's this, I know you can't be behind in homeschool, but we're not comparing ourselves to our peers. We are reading and we have the right interventions. And I think right now she's feeling pretty confident about it, which I never thought I'd see. So
we are all about forward progress here. We are all about and Amanda will say too, like 2 steps forward, 1 step back is still forward progress. It's okay. It's just forward progress is what we're looking for. It can be small, it can be incremental, but just that growth that's so important. So yeah, that's awesome. So we've established that not only can you homeschool a dyslexic child, but the odds that they're going to receive the supports that they need in the public school system are not amazing. So I'm curious, what are some challenges to homeschooling a dyslexic learner? What are some of the advantages to homeschooling a dyslexic learner? How might your day-to-day look different? Like, just give us the full scoop on what homeschooling a dyslexic kiddo looks like. You also have a neurotypical kid as kind of your baseline. So how's this one different?
Yeah, I think she needed my help a lot longer, and maybe in some areas she still does. When kids are in, or at least my neurotypical son was in 3rd, 4th grade, he was fine. He knew his daily schedule. She might need my help more. And I think something else with dyslexic kids, sometimes it is a spectrum. Their working memory might not be so great. You might tell her 5 times that she has something at this time. And no, I didn't know that. I didn't have it at that time. So we do a lot of scheduling and going over things. Whereas maybe with a neurotypical kid, those things aren't always necessary. I think there are advantages to homeschooling 100%. I don't have to worry about the state standards, the standardized testing, which starts in Florida at kindergarten. She's just learning to learn and she's learning on her own pace. So if she wants to take a discussion-based class without any reading or writing, she's loving it. She did a class that was a road trip through the United States and she got to raise her hand and share what she learned and feel like she's part of something, not just judge on her ability to read or write. So I think having the ability to personalize that education, it stops kids from feeling like they don't fit in this box you're trying to put them in. But really, the world is built around them. So I think that's a unique advantage. I do hear a lot of people who maybe their child's diagnosed with dyslexia and they're like, nope, they've got to assimilate. They got to get in the school system. They got to learn. And it's hard. I know that it's a privilege to homeschool and have all of these opportunities and these resources. But for me, seeing the way that she can love learning, even if it looks different from her neurotypical brother, that's the whole point. She loves learning. She's allowed to explore her interests. She doesn't feel like she doesn't belong, that everything's just sort of built around her. And I think that's huge. Again, I will always advocate for the public school system. But if you're telling a kid they're failing from the time they're 5 or 6, they think themselves a failure. And so when she gets to accomplish these things her own way, she's on top of the world. And I cannot emphasize enough that I never thought we'd be here. She completed her theater club yesterday, and theater club was something that I don't think she ever thought was in her future. So just seeing that she can have these wins and feel like she belongs, I think that's such a huge advantage to homeschooling.
I think that's huge for anybody who's listening, who's on the struggle bus in the phase that you were in a couple of years ago. Like, there's something up and I don't know what to do. Just this consistent messaging that your kiddo is thriving, your kiddo is happy. It took a shit ton of work and I'm sure you lost a lot of sleep, but she's feeling confident and she's thriving and she's succeeding. And in part because of her effort and then in part because of the things that you've put into place, but it's possible. So if you're in that struggle bus phase where you're like, this is never going to work out okay. Listen, it does. It does. Yeah.
It does. It's true. When people are just starting out, every time someone says their kid is struggling in reading in any group, I'm like, message me. I'll talk on the phone. I know what it's like to, not know anyone else struggling. When we did Florida virtual school, I had friends with their kids in my kids' class, and I'm watching all of them do all of these things. And I'm like, oh my God. It's the loneliest thing in the world. And I, as a parent, was depressed. I was just crying in my closet every single day, like something is wrong and no one is listening. So I know what that feels like. So I always tell people to reach out for me. And I know in those early days, it feels like nothing is going to be okay. And finding out that your child's dyslexic, finding out that 1 in 5 are dyslexic, you feel less alone. People wonder if it's scary to get the diagnosis, but it's really not, because now you have a name, and now we know what tools work best. And it takes the struggle. I mean, it doesn't eliminate the struggle, especially not immediately, but it takes the guesswork out, and you know how to best provide your kid with the tools that they need.
I mean, I had a moment the other day, because I know people feel similarly when they get other diagnoses as well, where they have this like, it's awful, it's not going to be okay, and all of this. And I was thinking the other day, I had to do one of those "Are you a robot?" challenges, and it was so freaking hard, and I couldn't figure it out. And I called one of my kids, and I'm like, what do people who don't have an autistic kid do when this happens? Because I was like, I swear I'm not a robot, but I don't know how to express that to you. And he looked at it. It even took him a couple of seconds, so I felt better about myself. But I was like, no, you need brains that work in different ways. The world needs these diversities. So yeah.
It's true. And dyslexic thinkers have such huge advantages in so many ways. I have a neurotypical kid, and he's very creative. He's an artist. He's a writer. But when it comes to engineering and building, if something doesn't work, he's going to be like, oh, this doesn't work. And he's going to put it down. And she's like, no, it's going to work. And it doesn't matter what she has to change or do or build. And both my kids are on an Odyssey of the Mind team, which is like creative problem solving. And she's the youngest on the team. And her coaches are always telling me, like, she just used wires and she built something and it worked. She doesn't give up. They have such like out of the box thinking skills. It's such a huge advantage. So it's not all struggle, even though it seems like that, because we're trying to get kids who think one way to assimilate to something that looks very different. But when we let them think the way they need to, I mean, the things that they can do and build are just, we need it.
Mm-hmm.
And for anyone who's listening and is like, I had no idea, or that's totally new information to me as far as the way dyslexic kiddos and adults think outside of the box and are amazing problem solvers and see things differently, go back and listen to, we did a book series and an author interview. Normal Sucks, we did it as like a longer thing. It's a podcast. It's a series. We re-released it so you don't have to go all the way back to the beginning. But if you want to go back to season 1 and listen to it, you're welcome to. Sound quality is a little better when we re-released it because we ran it through a better filter. But anyway, we talk about it a lot in there. It might be really interesting. The book is good if you want to read the book, but you can also just listen to us talk about it. And the author interview that we did with Jonathan Mooney was really excellent. We talk about it some there too. So if you finish this episode and you're like, oh, I want more, tell me more. That's how I often am. Anyone who follows us at all knows Megan loves herself a rabbit hole. She'd be listening to that in like 18 other episodes. But yeah, definitely go back and listen to that.
Yeah. And we should note it's related because Jonathan Mooney is dyslexic and didn't learn to read until he was 13. And as an adult, he's graduated from Brown University. He's published best-selling books. He still spells at a 3rd grade level, but that's his baseline. That's where he is. And he's amazing. So amazing. So.
And my daughter's dyslexia specialist. She's dyslexic herself. And I feel like, that adds such like a human layer to it. She knows what the struggle is and was like. And she teaches kids how to stand up for themselves. So she told my daughter a story how she went to Pilates class once and did something backwards and everyone laughed at her and she ran out as an adult. And then she was like, no, I don't want my students to do this. So she went in and she's like, you laughed at me, but at least I'm not mean. I have dyslexia, and just giving kids those tools. And I love that.
It's so awful. We wonder where mean kids come from. It's like, hello, because their mean parents are in Pilates class laughing at other adults.
And it's so nice to have these great role models, right? People who will stand up and say, look, I have this, or this, but like super successful. I had kind of mentioned a friend earlier who ended up pulling her kid out of the public school system. She actually ended up becoming a certified academic language therapist when her daughter was diagnosed with quite severe, like the far end of the dyslexia spectrum. But it wasn't totally a surprise to them because her husband, who is very successful at Apple, is also dyslexic. And so being able to come from that space of, okay, yeah, we have this diagnosis and we have to figure it out. But there are plenty of people out there who are happy and living adult lives and doing the things that matter to them, whether it's being an executive at Apple or Pilates because that's what lights you up. Having role models in any situation that are just even a few years older, but especially significantly older, where you can kind of be like, it's okay. Yeah, we're in the struggle bus right now, but like every step forward is a step towards success, whatever success looks like in your life. So important. Okay. So let's go back just a little. You were talking about the struggle when she was little and how hard that was. And I'm sure that there are people who are listening that are like, yes, okay, but tell me more. So how did you actually teach reading? Once you have this diagnosis, you know that you need to do it differently. This is not just buy some Bob books and muscle through. What kind of supports? You mentioned you had some great supports in place. Where did you start? And I know you haven't ended because she's only 10 and more
Yeah.
things will come up and more will develop. But where did you start and where are you at now with how you did it and what you're using?
Yeah, definitely. So when she was first diagnosed, I'll never forget, I was standing in my backyard and the neuropsych called and she's like, she has an extremely gifted IQ, but on the other side, she's very profoundly dyslexic. I was like, I knew it. I knew she's brilliant, but the dyslexia was such a surprise and I didn't know where to start. So the neuropsych had given me a list of different dyslexia specific specialists. Like I know Megan said, you see a lot of people go, Orton Gillingham, Orton Gillingham, Orton Gillingham everywhere. And a lot of the times these are just Orton Gillingham based curriculums. That is not ideal. And I understand there's a level of privilege to work with a certified Orton Gillingham specialist, a certified Barton Wilson specialist. And I know a lot of parents that go through the training themselves to be able to learn. But she put me in touch with a few, and it was like my fourth phone call was hers, the one that we use, Miss Dawn, and I was just crying. And I was so scared, and she promised me it was going to be okay. And she wasn't robotic, and she wasn't cold. And she's like, I promise. And she gave me her whole life story about being dyslexic. So I knew she was the one for us. And at the beginning, it was a lot of multisensory, a lot of sand trays or embroidery screens, bubbles, Play-Doh, things like that. Now we've kind of moved on from that. It was kind of went into decodable readers, which are books for kids with dyslexia. It's not just sight words. It helps them decode the words. So decodable readers. Now she's big into graphic novels. And I see a lot of parents like, those aren't books or audiobooks aren't books. Reading is reading, and having that confidence to be a reader. Audiobooks are wonderful. Graphic novels are wonderful. They're also great accommodations for kids with dyslexia. So she still sees Miss Dawn, her Orton Gillingham specialist, 3 times a week. It's a lot less intensive than it was when she was really little. It's a lot more just kind of private ELA instruction that meets her at where she needs. And then also she does a lot of discussion-based classes. Teachers on Outschool like Beth Foster who allow her to turn in audio recordings instead of written essays. So having those accommodations built into her classes and her school day, she loves the independence of an online class. She does not want to sit with me and learn anything. So having those are huge.
Mm-hmm. For what it's worth, we've done an episode about how audiobooks are real books and we will die on that hill, and how graphic novels have, and again, we go deep. We like statistics that the word choices or the vocabulary options that are in graphic novels actually supersede traditional books because authors have to use really rich language because they have so few words available to them to say the thing that the novel writer gets 3 paragraphs to say, and a whole bunch of other benefits to audiobooks and graphic novels as well in both of those episodes. So if you're struggling thinking like, but they have to hold a real book, go listen to those 2 episodes. It's not just me and Amanda being like, trust us, it's going to be great. It's data and studies, and we link the studies and all that stuff. So yes, all true. Yeah.
Research. We're all about the peer-reviewed research. So go give it a listen.
Yeah,
I
we
love
don't just
it.
do vibes. Yeah.
It's very refreshing. I love homeschooling, but sometimes in the groups, I want to be like, no.
Oh, we're in those groups too. We see that.
Yeah.
We say that advice too. Yeah. I will add a quick note too, because I've been a Florida homeschooler twice now in my journey of homeschooling. I've homeschooled in too many places. And I'm not asking you your finances and how you're paying for all this, Lindsay, but Floridians are very lucky because there's a unique ability scholarship for kids who have specific diagnoses. There's a list of diagnoses and you can apply and you can get funding. It does not come from the public school system, which is one of the biggest. Oh, okay. Because the teachers' unions are currently suing the state of Florida, and everybody's like, the money wouldn't even go back to you because it didn't come from you in the first place. So, anyway, it's a political hot potato in Florida. But states that have programs like that for special needs kiddos, my gosh, it is amazing to be able to at least partially fund, even if it's not covering everything a family needs, to be able to offset some of the cost of what you're talking about. Because I'm sure there's some people who are listening who are like, I can barely afford to put gas in my car. How the fuck am I supposed to pay for this? And that's the reality. That's why you said it's a privileged diagnosis because
Yeah. And
all of this
talking
costs
about
money.
UA, like you just brought up the Unique Ability Scholarship, we have, for anyone listening, Step Up for Students, and we have AAA scholarships. So there are two providers. People say Step Up is full, and they don't realize AAA scholarship is smaller. It exists. It's there, and they're open for a lot more once Step Up closes. So yeah, a lot of my friends at the public school system are like, traitor, and you've left. And I'm like, no, I will always advocate for public education, but you have children who need these services. They
Hmm.
need these tools. And like you said, if you're choosing between putting gas in your car or being loyal to the Florida public school system or giving your kids the tools they need, it's a lot more nuanced than people can really understand. So I do appreciate the UA scholarships. I've seen them help a lot of families, and there's a lot of families I talk to here in the area in Broward County where I am who they have to figure out, they have to pull their kid just so they can apply for these scholarships to give them the services. Well, now they have to figure out how to work from home, who's watching their kids. They can't just leave their job. So it's not just some quick fix, but
Hmm.
it is funding that is available. And I think we can believe in and support quality public education and also realize that it's not meeting the needs of these kids. It's almost ableist to be like, nah, suffer for the greater good. So
Hmm.
I do always advocate for UA funding when it's an option for people because it is a huge help.
Hmm. Yeah.
That is one of those hills that I will die on. The number of people I hear who are basically like, if you're progressive, if you're liberal, you have to suffer to support public education. But then also, they firmly believe, well, you can be both happy for someone and sad for yourself. And I'm like, I don't really understand why, in some situations, two things can be true at once. But when it comes to education, only one thing can be true. Like, it doesn't work that way. The same. I don't think there's any world where we're like, don't take my taxes to pay for the local public school. Like, hugely support them, would support their fundraisers, and absolutely want them to be there so everyone has access to
Hmm.
a quality education. But at the same time, understanding that there are lots of different ways to educate your children, and homeschool can be a really good option for a lot of families, especially families who are dealing with other things,
Hmm.
not just a neurotypical kiddo who will thrive in a brick and mortar school.
Hmm.
So, all right, if we're talking like nitty gritty nuts and bolts things, I have kind of a two-parter for you. First, if you're evaluating things, how do you know if a reading curriculum is dyslexia friendly? And then the second part of that would be, are there any programs that you're like, yes, check this out? It might not be the right fit for your kiddo. It might not be where they're at, or it might not meet them, but these are some solid ones to start with looking at or identifying.
That's a good question. So when we first pulled to homeschool, I was still learning this on the go. All my friends used Oak Meadows. I'm like, I'm going to try Oak Meadow. Beautiful curriculum, way not dyslexia friendly. There's just so much. When you're looking at a curriculum for a child with dyslexia, a lot of the times you follow the same guidelines if you're looking for a child with ADHD, which mine also has. We want lively, we want short, we want something that can be all hands on deck here, creating things that are very multisensory friendly versus a text spiral. It's another nuance issue. A lot of people who are like, young children should never be learning on screens. But sometimes when you have children who are dyslexic, they want to talk. They want to talk to other kids. They want to showcase their learning that way. They're not going to learn from a text. So for us, we found, again, working with a certified Orton Gillingham specialist, we do a lot of that. Some people use All About Reading, things like that, that are Orton Gillingham based. I don't know if I would consider it, enough, but I understand it's an access issue too. It's one of those tricky things. So I would definitely recommend things where you can multisensory, create, build those Mark Rober boxes. Girl loves a Mark Rober box, and she will figure out 100 different ways other than the intended way to put it together. Mystery science. She loved mystery science, the way that it really encouraged autonomy a little bit. It would go step by step, and when you were ready, you would hit next, and it would take you to the next step. So she really felt like, look at me, I am independently doing this. Zern is a great math program. It's online, it's free, it's very game based, it's thorough, but it also moves quickly, so she didn't get bored with it. And she does a zoology class, secular zoology, of course, through virtual classes by still playing school. She loves animals, she loves to learn about animals, she loves to watch the videos of the animals and talk to kids about the animals. And out school classes that she takes, she loves anything discussion based. And so that's really been like the secret of what works for us. But there is definitely a lot of trial and error, and I think a lot of people pivot to homeschooling and they want to use the curriculum their friends are using. That's what they're familiar with. But anything that's really heavy, a lot of reading, a lot of writing, a lot of sitting, it's not going to be the best bet, especially for a younger child who's dyslexic.
I'll just never understand why people just absolutely lose their minds over Meadow. You will never. I can't imagine you ever doing a coaching session with me where I'm like, you know what, you should look at Oak Meadow. That's a whole other story.
I'm with you.
Can I just ask one clarifying question going back to the fact that you have a tutor for your kiddo?
Yeah.
And you said she's Orton Gillingham certified. I think I have seen discussion in groups that there's different levels of Orton Gillingham certifications. And some of them are super duper basic, like you went to a 6-hour continuing education thing online. And some of them are pretty in depth and they really know their shit. Is that true? And if so, how does a parent know how to sift between tutors who have brief exposure to the concept versus the ones who really know their shit?
That is a good question. I'm not sure that I really have a great answer, except that with our UA funding, I need all the certifications and degrees. So I see that ours has a stack like this. And then I have another friend that uses her for Barton and Wilson, and it's the same thing. We've got a stack like this. And I know she still does a lot of continuing education. I know that she trains other people too. And you kind of see the same names, at least locally, when you're looking. And then you see some that are like, I've done an Orton Gillingham seminar before, so you can kind of tell. I see her degrees and everything.
Okay. But for
That's
parents to know, maybe just tease that out a little bit, ask some questions in and around that, because I think there's different exposure levels when you can still say oh, I'm OG, but not really, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I was saying, I have a friend who is just completing her master's degree specifically in being able to teach these kinds of things. She specifically focuses on basic language skills, which is multisensory. And I think she did more the OG focus, not both. But in any event, there's Take Flight, there's basic language skills. And these are programs that you learn while getting your master's degree specifically in being able or to be able to do dyslexia therapy instead of just tutoring. And I know you keep mentioning tutoring, but for most people who are more on the extreme end of that spectrum, you're looking at a therapy type thing where it's 3 times a week and it's with someone who has a sort of not just a weekend certification, but a degree, and it's more all in. And then that might not be necessary for people who are on the other end of the spectrum. A program like All About Reading and making sure it's really multisensory and things like that might be enough, with a little bit of extra support. So
definitely.
That's
and a lot of kids, don't jump to they don't need the tutoring 3 or 4 times a week. You're right. It is a spectrum. There are a lot of kids who can do well with standard literacy instruction. There are All About Reading tutors who can go through the program with them. Sometimes that's all they need is the little bit of the handhold. I know my daughter, she is profoundly dyslexic. So what it looks like for her is a little different. She had a friend diagnosed recently and the parents were like, well, we didn't realize because our journeys are not the same. So it really was it is. It's a
Yeah.
spectrum.
But I think that's an important distinction in language, Amanda, like, because I'm not in the dyslexia world. Like, to me, it's tutoring, but that's the therapy. I wouldn't have known that distinction. And you're right, that does make a huge difference. That approach is quite different for kiddos who are on that end of the spectrum that need that. So, yeah. All right, cool. So, we want to talk to you about the emotional aspects of dyslexia in just a moment and how you're navigating areas related to confidence, which you've already talked about quite a bit, and acceptance or understanding of your kiddo understanding their own brain, because that's super important too. And like we said, especially since you're right in that sweet spot for puberty kicking off, let me tell
Hmm.
you, because I have a mix of boys and girls, and I know you have an older one who's already in the puberty thing, but is a boy. I can only tell you from my own experience, when that girl gets there, buckle the fuck up. Okay. So, yeah. And again, I love having teenagers. I love it. I wouldn't trade it for anything. Couldn't pay me to go back and change a diaper, but holy shit. At least that's been our experience in our house. Maybe other people's have been different. But anyway, first, before we get there, want to just quickly remind listeners that we have created an absolutely obscene amount of resources to help you get started homeschooling or to make confident, supported decisions along your homeschool journey if you're already in the mix and on your way. Head to our website. It's homeschoolmomsunfiltered.com. You can find links to books that we've written, meaning me and Amanda, personalized coaching with either of us, both of us, unit studies we've created, live support meetings where you can come and we have a group and we all discuss, and you need to support. Homeschooling in a vacuum sucks and it's not a path to success, and just so much more. So please go check that out. If there's something that you're wondering about, stressing about, avoiding making a decision about, hello, I'm all about that. We can pretty much guarantee that we have a resource that will help you. So yeah, homeschoolmomsunfiltered.com. It's in the show notes, or you can just type it into Google. Either way. But back to dyslexia. I'm curious because we see these questions a lot with parents where they're like, okay, we just got this diagnosis. First of all, we see people who are like, should I tell my kid? Yes, that's step one. Yes, your kid needs to know how their brain
Yes.
works. Like, that's holy shit. Okay. But what are the conversations that you were having when your kiddo was younger, maybe at the time of diagnosis, and versus even now, where if there's a point of frustration and you kind of have to circle back to like, well, your brain works differently, kiddo. How are you explaining that? How are those conversations sounding?
When she
Okay.
was first diagnosed, I sat her down and we went over what it meant. There's a book called Brilliant Bee. She was younger. It's a children's picture book that explains kind of how dyslexia works. We talked about it. And it was kind of a relief to her, I think, to know. And for a while, when she was little, she struggled with confidence, but she would also tell people, I have dyslexia. I don't understand this. And then, it ebbs and flows. The older she got, I think the more we see people with dyslexia in the media, or maybe we have just sought them out. But during the Olympics, my son would tell her, oh, like this ice skater, this speed skater, they have dyslexia. So I think we've just kind of normalized it for her. Sometimes she's frustrated, even still, even though it's something that she's gotten a little bit used to. She does get frustrated. She wishes things were easy like they were for other people, especially when we are in a group setting. And I think for many, many years, probably from the age of 6 to 9, we didn't do any co-ops. We didn't do any group academic anything. And that was her request, because the times that we did non-academic, like marine biology or just playing in the ocean or going with friends, gymnastics class, she would always feel ambushed if someone gave her a worksheet. Like one gymnastics class, it was a game, a jumping game, and something was like, write down your friends' birthdays and the first initial of their name. And she was like, I'm out. And she was scared to do anything. And then she would want me to talk to the teacher and explain, because she was too afraid to. And then I think at this point, she's made such big strides that maybe she's not afraid to say to people, hey, I'm dyslexic. This is harder for me. I believe it was Orlando Bloom. Don't quote me on that. She's like really into Lord of the Rings right now, who's dyslexic. And so she's just like, oh, I'm dyslexic too. So I think the more we try to normalize it for her, or she sees it in other people, and I think she understands it a lot more now. She's accepted it. But for a long time, it was really hard. It was something she did feel shame, or she would get nervous. She would want me to talk to people. She didn't want to face them. So that was hard. I think it's hard to be different. She also has ADHD. She is an adoptee. There's a lot of layers that she has felt different in her life. And I feel like dyslexia was just one more. And so for her, that was a struggle. We have a friend who owns an ice cream shop around here, and he told her, I'm dyslexic too. So the more and more people that would say that, she would feel less alone, I
Hmm.
think. But being so profoundly dyslexic, even now when she gets really tired, she'll jumble up word sounds
Hmm.
if she's playing with her friends. And we have kids when we don't know kids and we're in a park and she'll jumble a word and they'll say, why'd you say it like that? So learning to stand up for herself, I
Hmm.
think it's a work in progress.
Tom Holland just did Amy Poehler's podcast, and I watched it the other day while I was working. And he said the reason he's never done SNL is because he's afraid of the cue cards, because he's severely dyslexic. And that's his definition. Maybe in England they use that terminology instead of profoundly. I'm not sure. And it was so funny because Amy Poehler goes, we've had people do that show that are completely high out of their minds, right? And they do the cue. She was like, I think you could do it. I think as long as you ask them not to make any last minute changes and stuff like that. But he goes, I'm petrified to do the cue cards, so I've never done it before. And it's interesting because in England, I don't know, is Richard Branson one of the people that's been on the Epstein list? Like, I feel like, has
I
he?
wonder that every time.
I mean, wealthy and that's like slightly problematic, but
Right.
I don't think he's actually Epstein problematic.
Okay, because there's people that I've referenced culturally for years, and then all of a sudden you're like, fuck Stephen Hawking. Come on, dude. Those George and the Universe books were amazing. Now I'm like, for fuck's sake, I can't do this because you're a pedophile. But Richard Branson has done so much in England where like they have billboards even in England about dyslexic thinking, statistics about dyslexia. I know one time I was waiting for a bus in England and there was one about the percentage of neurotypicals or non-dyslexics that own their own business, and then the percentage of dyslexics who are entrepreneurs, and the number is staggering. And so there are these pockets where there are these opportunities where the dyslexic mind excels, and if you are homeschooling and you have the ability to be able to channel in those directions, it's fantastic. But yeah, he does TV commercials. Keira Knightley's in them, Princess Eugenia. And so I love that there's that attempt to make a cultural shift, and as far as people thinking about themselves, but then also people who are hiring managers, who are school administrators, who are in these positions, because we know that neurodivergence affects employment in so many different ways, depending on what your neurodivergence classification is. So for people to realize that the dyslexic brain is freaking brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. You just need to set it up for success, like most other people's brains do too.
So true. And we're doing a great job culturally taking the stigma away. I mean, I remember being in elementary school, and if someone was struggling, it's like, like that kid's getting pulled out to all of these things. And I think we're doing a great job as a society in that regard, removing the stigma. But I wish there were more resources out there. And I do think early intervention matters. So even a little awareness goes a long way.
Mm-hmm. Can I say, I feel like we have been making steps, and now we have the asshole in chief who made fun of Gavin Newsom for his dyslexia. And think what you want about Gavin Newsom. I'm not holding him up as a perfect individual, but he's a great public speaker. And he's never reading a speech. That's him speaking. His brain can do that. Why are you making fun of this part? I mean, I can't. He's such an idiot. Not Gavin Newsom, the other one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But anyway.
Yeah. No, it's true.
Yeah. It is. But I think you make a great point, and I kind of stumbled over it earlier in the episode. But again, that idea of role models, and it can be athletes and successful business people and actors in these kind of industries where the dyslexic brain often thrives. But it's just as important to have everyday role models. I talk about it as well with ethnic diversity and diversity in our materials and things like that. Yes, you want to focus on specific things and highlight specific things, but this idea of just everyday examples, just people that are in your sphere, that are the people you want your kids to look at and be like, oh, I can be like that, or I want to be like that. And just keeping it real. And I love the fact that your kiddo has more of that and those opportunities to see that. And if you're listening and you're new in your journey, find those people in your own circle, identify those things, and just make it a part of your normal life so that it's there.
And there's so many, like my best friend's mom, a lifelong principal, and who knew she was dyslexic? And then one day, casually last year, she's like, oh yeah, I'm dyslexic too. Like we know. I think the more that you talk about it, the more people will be like, hey, me too. Because I mean, 1 in 5, chances are once you open that door.
Yeah,
absolutely. All right. So we have talked loads of different things. we're getting towards the end of the episode. We can't talk forever. This could end up being one of those like 3-hour episodes we have sometimes. But can you offer some tips, I guess, on ways parents can help their children develop confidence in their strengths while also supporting areas of struggle? This is one of those things we talk a lot about, this idea that there's nothing wrong, especially as homeschoolers, of being able to focus on strengths, but especially when there's an extra diagnosis in the mix, there does need to be support for certain areas of struggles. So what do you think are some tips to help parents navigate that?
It can be tricky. I know with my daughter, I could tell her strengths all day long, and she's going to focus on what she struggles with. And that has been a struggle for a long time. I do think maybe it was my instinct to kind of, when she's like, no, I don't want to do group anything. I just want to stay alone, to kind of just accommodate that. I don't want to push or make them uncomfortable, especially a neurodivergent child. But if I could go back, I would encourage those strengths more then, to kind of put her out there, like you were talking about, a little bit of kindness. The first time we experienced it in an out school class with teacher Beth Foster, and Carmen never got a chance to read an Animal Club because she would never volunteer to read the names in Animal Club. And so Beth Foster came to me and she's like, can I tell you everything ahead of time, so you can print out cards that she can have next to her and she can feel like she can do it? And I think if I could go back in time, I would focus on her strengths and look for people willing to accommodate that way. Let her do more group learning activities, and maybe just talk to the instructor ahead of time. Figure out a way to build in those accommodations instead of help her feel like, no, she's got to hide because she's not ready. But you never want to push. We do have some demand avoidance, so it can be a little bit tricky. But sometimes coming from me, like, wow, Carmen, that was great. You did beautiful. You really worked hard on that. Look, she's like, whatever. But hearing it from other people, instructors, peers, I think, not to be self-deprecating, but it means so much more than coming from her mom. So I think that's something I would go back and do if I had the chance. But if I were a parent at the beginning of this journey and my child's feeling really insecure, they're struggling with reading, definitely not push, but I encourage them, get out there, look at all these things that you're good at, all the things you excel at, all of your talents, and let them shine. Don't kind of just hide underneath it, which I think we did a lot of at the beginning. It was such new territory. So that would be my best advice. It can be hard, especially when you have a child with demand avoidance. They're not going to listen to one thing you say. They're going to focus on their weaknesses. I think hearing it from her peers really makes a huge difference. Letting her have those times with her peers, not hiding it away, making accommodations as we need. If I were a parent at the start, I would probably start there.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like a little bit of a pinball, but I'm going to go in a little bit of a different direction here. So are there any programs that you're using, specifically technology? I'm thinking you already said audiobooks. We're all about the audiobooks. Other apps, anything speech to text. Some of them are great. Some of them suck. I have a little bit of experience with Speechify, which is also a great tool for some people. Is there anything that you have used that you're like, yes, this is amazing and life-saving and you should totally look into it?
Yeah, Speechify is great. For us, also MyDys, MYDYS. It's an app on her iPad. She can scan a huge wall of text and she can listen to it. She can pause when she needs. So when she took a social studies class and there was a worksheet, scan it, it'll read to you. You can slow down the audio. You can stop the audio. A lot of the times with those scanning pens and things, she's like going too fast. I don't understand what the hell this is saying.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really easy to customize and slow down, pause as you need. She really enjoys that. And the basics like Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, just recording an audio recording. She loves that. I think that's her favorite. She has little patience to do text to talk and she has to change some words. So she's like, I'm going to record an audio recording. And the teachers will just transcribe them or listen to them. So, but yeah, MyDys, that's a great app. It is a paid app.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Yeah, that's awesome. That's like Google Lens, because I live in a country where English is not the first language. I scan at least one thing a day trying to figure out, am I supposed to defrost this before I put it in the oven? And I'm like, zap, Google Lens. So yeah,
Yes.
before I burn my apartment down cooking something the wrong way. Yeah.
So reading gets a lot of attention, and we talked almost the entire episode about that. But I do wonder about writing as well. How has dyslexia affected writing and spelling for your kiddo, and what strategies have helped in your home?
That's a good one. You're right. We usually default to reading, but writing was a struggle. And for her, she's very creative. She would have all of these stories that she would come up with in her head, and putting them on paper, it wasn't happening. A lot of what she works with her specialist, her tutor, and again, it's a specialized tutor, will be sounding out words, writing, but it's still complicated. She also has dysgraphia. It can be very intensive. And her go-to is usually an audio recording. If she's texting, she will send an audio message. She kind of builds these accommodations into her life. But those things can't really, recreate like creative writing, which is something she's really into right now. Songwriting. She's really into songwriting. And a lot of the time she'll just tape record and sing her words out loud and ask someone to transcribe them for her. But the older she gets, if she's sending emails with her friends, or she wants to write a story, like her brother writes stories, she doesn't want to just say it to me and have me type it. So that's a challenge we're kind of living in real time right now. I think those accommodations that exist helped us through the early elementary. And now that we get to the 5th grade, 6th grade, where writing becomes such a big part, that's something that we're working through right now. I am very opposed to the homeschoolers cannot be behind, like we talked about earlier. But I do see in the groups a lot of parents whose kids are, to me, maybe obviously dyslexic. Maybe they haven't gotten there yet, or maybe they do have a diagnosis and they're like, write that essay, write that essay, write that essay. It can be pretty traumatizing. My daughter would get migraines trying to stare at the paper that long. The words are jumping around. So I've tried to lean into the accommodations, and now we're kind of going back and learning. She's learning to type. She's taking a typing class, and she's trying. If she's using speech to text or leaving an audio recording, she's trying to at least write some of the words. So, I mean, it is a work in progress for us right now.
Incremental progress counts. It doesn't matter how slow. It doesn't matter 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It all counts. So it's good. Yeah. All right. So one last question for the day. I think we're questioned out, if that's a thing. Later, I'll be like, oh, we should have asked her this. Or we'll have to have you back on in 2 years when you've gotten the whole writing thing sorted out. And you're like, we're in that journey. You can come back in season 6 and tell us about it.
Yeah.
But I'm curious if there's one thing that you wish someone had told you earlier that you're like, oh, this would have made a world of difference if I had known this 3 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever.
Really, I'm just going to keep coming back to that, like 1 in 5, that 1 in 5 statistic. I had that evaluation done when she was 6. Wish I would have done it a year earlier. I wish I wouldn't have let her fail. Ron DeSantis standardized testing in kindergarten. So I would go back. That would be it. I would know in my gut something is wrong and not listen to everyone tell me that just give her some time. You're comparing your kids. If I knew that 1 in 5 back then, if I knew enough about dyslexia to listen to my gut that something wasn't adding up, it would be that. It will always be that. And I know you can't kick yourself for what you don't know, but I think that's why I will be obnoxious and I will be an advocate for, like, hey, call me an alarmist, call me what you will. If your kid is 5 and 6 and they are struggling, yeah, they're young, and it's true. Not everyone learns at the same pace, but early intervention and
Yeah. No, I think that's absolutely it. Early intervention works when it's early, and not every kid needs it. There are kids who are, they'll pick things up a little bit slower, but there's a difference between a kiddo who is going a little bit slower at their own pace and a kiddo who is really struggling. And the vast majority of us, we can pick that up. As much as we try to not be about vibes around here, there's some vibe to that it's like, this is a normal struggle. This is we should look into this struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I have to say, this has been really awesome. I have learned a ton today, and I think I speak for Megan and a ton of our listeners when I say just a really big thank you. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. Thank you for sharing your journey and advice and lived experience and expertise with us. I will say we typically end each episode with a mantra. It's kind of our way of supporting people all week long in between the episodes with an encouraging mantra they can come back to when they just need that support or that reminder that they're doing okay and they've got it. But this week, instead of our usual approach to the mantra, we would love it if you, Lindsay, could wrap us up with a mantra style bit of inspiration, just telling us a moment when you realized your kiddo was going to be okay.
I wish you knew me when I was crying in my closet every day, because I feel like this would be so much more impactful than it is. But if you know, you know. And to everyone who is listening and is crying in their closet every single day, I'm going with yesterday. When yesterday my daughter ran out with her theater club certificate and was like, I read the scripts. I'm a star. I want to do all the theater clubs. I'm going to join them all. And I'm going to be an actress. And the like joy. And I posted a picture on my Facebook and Instagram, but like the joy in her face. There was a time I never thought I was ever going to see that again. And every worst case scenario, I played it and I woke up at 3 a.m. thinking about it. And I think last night she slept through the night. I slept through the night and she woke up. It is going to be okay. And I think seeing that sparkle and that joy in her face, there's nothing better, because this doesn't define you and it doesn't have to define you negatively. And I know it's so corny and people are like, it's a superpower. And that it devalues the struggle that is very real when we're existing in society, but also to know that you belong and you don't have to fit these confines. I think seeing that she felt it herself, not just me saying it, then I knew it was all going to be okay.
I love that for her and for you and for your whole family, because it just emanates. It's amazing. I will say, as we wrap up, your comment earlier about how long it took you to recover your kiddo from the kindergarten experience with FLVS. I had a similar experience where it took me well over a year to recover my kiddo. And we did an episode about top 5 things we would do over again if we were to start homeschooling again. And one of mine was, when you know it's not working, pull the plug. If your kiddo is suffering, do not leave them in that environment, because the recovery period will just be that much longer. And I made that mistake. And so I feel you, like you said, you can't go back and kick yourself, but yeah, it's hard and it takes so much time for them to recover. And we have to give them that space and time, because they need time to heal after those experiences. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, friends. Well, thank you for tuning in today. We hope you found Lindsay's journey and experience as insightful and motivating as we have. Thank you, Lindsay, for joining us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Head to Homeschool Moms Unfiltered for more resources. We will catch you next week. But in the meantime, happy homeschooling.
Yeah, have a great one.